Hello, and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons, your favorite tabletop role playing game news and game design and review and talky talk podcast. I'm Shawn Merwin here with the talkiest of the talkers, Teos Abadia.
Yep, the trick is getting me to shut up. That is true. Happy holidays, Shawn. How is it going with your eggnog? How spiked is it on a 1 to 10?
The eggnog has not been spiked. The eggnog was turned into sort of a pastry bread,
Oh,
which was very tasty. And then the rest was frozen before I could get to it. So I'm going to have to thaw the spiked eggnog before I can actually partake of it this year.
just like Austin Powers.
Yeah. How are the festivities shaking out on your side of the country?
Yeah, good. It's lovely having my kids home. That is just wonderful, and we're doing all sorts of fun things with them, and doing neat things like getting them clothes for their first jobs and stuff like that. And so it's all very exciting things. Internships on the horizon.
Nice.
It's really nice. So the other thing we did is throw a holiday party, which was a success in two terms. One, it was really fun and very nice and fun times with people, but the other was our level of stress and collaboration of everybody in the family pitching in was very good. So that was win-win.
That is a win when everything comes together and everyone is still together at the end.
Yep.
Well, for us, the holidays are always play game times. Put down the phone, close the laptop, play some games. So I'm looking forward to that. While I continue to try to finish projects before the end of the year.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that goes. But, happy holidays to everybody, regardless of how you celebrate, where you celebrate, what you celebrate. But we celebrate our listeners. And one of the steps in that process is taking their tweets and their toots and their emails and their Patreon messages and answering them. So we're going to start this week with Junderland Games 1186 via YouTube, who says, how often do you incorporate other combat ending objectives into your adventures? Are all or often your combats either kill or be killed? The question then talks about Shadow Dark, Dragonbane, and Daggerheart. Like OSR games, encourage players to solve problems without combat if possible because they can be very deadly. Many modern games have combat systems that are intended to be balanced. So it's more combat as sport rather than combat as war. And the question then says, Shadow Dark does curb this by having reaction rolls and morale checks. So fighting to the death is not often if you follow the rules. If you fight to the death and fail, you just simply make a new character. Then the opposite end, Daggerheart, you are very unlikely to die, and only if you choose to, because you have those choices of how your character leaves the encounter. So what is the consequence of failure? How do you design your adventure where combat isn't the only option? All great questions, a lot to unpack here. So let's start with the main two questions. How do you incorporate other combat ending objectives, and how do you design them? So first and foremost, it's great advice to try to do that, to put other types of endings to your encounters. But it is much easier to say to do it than it is to actually do it. Because the games that we play are generally based on stories or media that we watch or read.
Yeah.
And in those things, the threats often need to be defeated by spell or sword or gun or some sort of violence that ends the threat in a permanent way. So even if there are other goals in an encounter, the threat is often still there. The goblins, even after you stop their ritual, the goblins are still there. They still have pointy spears that they're trying to jab you in the face with. So unless you either remove the group from the threatened area or remove the threat from wherever your party is, there can be an unsatisfactory narrative outcome based on this other kind of objective. Are you with me so far, Teos?
I'm absolutely with you. Yep.
Okay. So things like reaction rolls and morale checks can be great. But as a designer of such rules or as the game master who uses them, you have to think not just about the enemies giving up, but what's the aftermath of that surrender,
Mm-hmm.
right? You're fighting the goblins. The goblins decide to flee. You're in a dungeon. What's the first thing that the party's going to want to do? Chase down those goblins, right? So you're not ending the combat sooner. You're
Yeah.
not. In fact, you might be lengthening the combat because now you have to. Okay, they move 30 feet, then you move 30 feet, then they move
Yep.
30 feet and go around the corner. Now what? So while it makes sense narratively and it may seem like it is a good option,
Mm-hmm.
it's often not a good option. So you have to always keep that in mind. And then you have the concept of, okay, the goblins surrender them. We're not going to chase them down. The goblins surrendered. All right, now we have to question them. What do these goblins
Yeah.
know? Do they know the whole map of the dungeon? Well, if so, you've just given your party the whole map of the dungeon. Or if you say, well, they're not going to tell you, then we get into that shady, tortury, bad
Right.
place that we don't want to be in.
Yep.
So, it's a very complex question that seems like it's got an easy answer to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it is anything involving running away or surrendering can leave you feeling deflated. And that's why I think you can't band-aid. Well, I think there's two things going on here that are part of this question. One is, what do you do to adapt the end of an encounter? And I think what I hear you saying, and it's something I would say, is adapting the on the fly is hard unless you've really set yourself up for that to succeed.
Yep.
And rules like morale, which 5e has, it's not like D&D doesn't have morale rules or is unaware of the morale rules it had in AD&D or basic or anything like that. There's plenty of a through line there. But the problem with morale rules is they tend to apply right when you meet each other before you've gotten into anything interesting. And so it sort of dictates what kind of combat it is, which may or may not be what you actually want as GM. If you're highly improvisational and you want to just wing everything, then sure, it's fine, right? But I would almost rather that not be a morale check and be a disposition check, a step higher up, because it's strange when you explain what the characters see, and then you roll on the table and go, oh, and they're super friendly, or oh, they are immediately violent. That is not, to me, the way one should set up a great encounter.
Very true. So the second part of the question then is, if you're creating an encounter with a win condition other than defeating all the monsters, how do you do that?
Yeah.
I'm going to give maybe 5 tips here. The first thing is, make it perfectly clear to the players what the goals of their encounter is. The goals are. Because if you hide those goals, players are just going to fall back on what they know, which is beat the snot out of whatever's in front of them.
Yeah.
Right. So you want to be very clear to the players. Hiding it behind perception checks or hiding it behind arcana checks might seem like it's more realistic and fun. Oh, you make the arcana check to realize that this ritual only has, a minute left before it's done. Great, except what if no one has trained in arcana or no one rolls high enough, and then it becomes moot. So make it clear. Find a way to make it clear.
Yeah.
Going back to an earlier point too, is be sure that when the goal is achieved, the encounter is over. So if the goal is to stop the ritual, don't have the enemies hanging around after the ritual stopped, because that really is anticlimactic. Anticlimactic. So if the ritual ends and they're fighting undead, all the undead are depowered, right? Bloom. Okay, cool.
Yep.
If the portal is closed, all the goblins that were guarding it are sucked into the portal and they're gone.
Yeah.
Right? Make it cool. Make it end there to show, hey, this was the goal, and you hit the goal.
Yeah.
And that's that.
And it's satisfying. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Make the goal of an encounter, whatever it is, equally epic to the place of the encounter within the story. I've seen encounters where the whole goal of the encounter is to get from point A to point B. You don't have to fight anything. You don't have to interact. You just have to get there. Now, there are likely things in the way. And if you put point A 120 feet from point B, most of the players are going to find a way to get there in 2 rounds, if not 1.
Uh-huh.
And if this is supposedly some big climactic event, and in 1 round everyone's there, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do. It doesn't feel that way. So think about how long it would take to do these non-combat things and make them equally viable. So if a normal combat goes 3 or 4 rounds, make the thing they need to do 3 or 4 rounds. Anything on that?
Yeah, well, I think a lot about, recently we talked about draw steel and how it creates at a very top level, it declares what ends this encounter, right? What is the goal, and why does it end? And they spend a fair amount of time in the book talking about this so that you will really weave this in. And it was very interesting to me when DMing Delian Tomb that it really does dig into this, and that every encounter has these sometimes alternate win conditions or just straight out, this is the win condition. And what it really says is just like abstract out that ending, right? And this speaks to some of the points you raised, but it is not maybe an immediately satisfying technique, but when you do it enough times, your players kind of realize, oh, okay, this is what we're doing when we play this game, right? And that is to say, and all the goblins flee. Well, can I chase one down? They're gone. I mean, what did you want to learn from them? I wanted to learn this. Yeah, one of them shouts out to you, this thing back at you to answer your question. But we're not going to go into the capture scene or any of that. They're just running away. Like it's just going to happen. And any of the variant like that, where just the end has been achieved and we resolve the way we would in a movie, right? Like it just happens. Yes, of course, they could have chased down every goblin or anything like that, but we've got things to do, and so we're going to stay on target. We're gonna do the what really makes the heart of the movie like scene go forward. And at first, it might feel a little awkward, but as you do it enough times, everybody falls into understanding. Well, that's the cadence of play. That's how we're going to approach it.
Yeah, but what you can't do then, as the designer or the game master, is punish the party later.
Yeah.
If this does happen. So you can't say, oh, they run away, everything's cool for 2 encounters, and then have an encounter where they do run away, and because of that, 2 dragons come instead of 1.
Right. Yeah.
And you say, oh, well, you let one of the goblins get away, so
then you have to advertise. You have to say, you see them running away, and one of them says, quick, get to the gong chamber and alert the second dragon. Okay. And then we know, you've got to tell them the information they need to know, right?
Yeah. Another tip is if the characters are doing something that involves ability checks to try to stop something, get somewhere, do certain things, provide degrees of success instead of just pass fail. Because so often in combat, we sort of, as D&D players, we're cool with pass fail. Not everybody is, but most players are like, okay, if I miss, I miss. If I hit, I hit.
Right.
That doesn't work as well in a very complex skill challenge sort of way. People want to be more gratified through great success.
Yeah.
And it's more interesting that, okay, you need to make 7 successes to close the portal, but you rolled a 20 plus, so you get 2 successes. Or you didn't pass, but you rolled really low, and the portal actually shoots energy back at you and, does 6 points of damage. That makes it seem more dynamic and more like combat than just, oh, I failed, I passed, I failed, I passed. It gives more interaction, which is something that's often missing from those sorts of scenes.
Yeah, and that also works if you do techniques like a clock, right? And you can say, well, that fills 2 wedges of the clock or something like that. Yeah, and part of that speaks to if you try to do something like say, well, if they succeed 3 times at a skill check, the goblins will surrender. But that the action economy can drive a player to say, well, let's see, I can make one skill check or probably kill a goblin. I should just kill a goblin.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so that's where it comes from, that through line of saying, what is it that you're designing from the very beginning, right? And the thing I always go to is just start with what the monsters are and what they're doing, and know that, right? Like, these monsters are protecting this temple at all costs because it's so important to them. Well, then they're going to die doing that, right? And that is part of the story, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We don't have to have an alternate to everything or even to most things, because combat can be very satisfying in most games. But if their goal is, they've been paid to be here, well, they're glad to get paid by somebody else, right? And they can make that very clear even early on. You stumbled into the wrong group, adventurers. We've been paid by the owners of this place to watch over this place, and you're going down. Paid by them. Well, what if we pay you more? Oh, I don't know. Suddenly we're negotiating, right? And that can be very fun because that's the through line. And just knowing that as DM, as a creator, is very important. Know why the monsters are here, what they're motivated by, and that can flow through to how the encounter ends.
Yeah. And the last tip is, whatever you do, whatever you decide, whether you're a designer for public play or even just running for your home group, play test it. Maybe this is you yourself play testing it with 5 random characters. Maybe it is you, if you're a publisher, going out to another group and play testing it to see what you're missing, to see if it actually runs the way you expect it to run. If it's full of these skill checks to close the portal, to negotiate, to stop the ritual, to get through the forest during a ongoing combat, run it in your own head, run it on paper, run it for a table, because you're going to find out that, 7 successes was too many. 3 successes was not enough, right? You'll figure that out through the play test and be able to then adjust to make it work exactly like you want it to work.
Love it.
Okay, cool. Then let's get on to Open World Addict Zero via YouTube, who says, is solo or one-on-one play best for dangerous dungeon crawls where the PC is not expected to survive? And my answer is no. I don't know if there's a greater context to this question, but no, just the opposite, really. I think one-on-one play is best when there's a variety of ways to handle a situation, to use stealth, to use charisma, to avoid bad situations, to use your whole toolbox in order to overcome, as we were just talking about in the previous question, overcome the situation in a different way. And a dungeon crawl, especially a dangerous one, seems to be the least amount of those options are available to you.
Yeah, I'd sort of agree. And I think this comment was one that was on our, where we did our one-on-one play. With Baker's Doesn't. And I think that, like you want to tell a satisfying story, I think, with one-on-one play. Otherwise, you're better off doing something like, Hero Quest or something like that, and play a bunch of characters, because you're just trying to crawl through. And so playing a game like that would just support just that would make more sense. But I think you're trying to tell the story of your character, and the thing that happens with one-on-one play is it's all about that one player and their character, and so they need a way to shine and provide exposition, which I think you saw in our attempt, right, where I would try to talk in character and show what my character is about, and you would respond to that and have various NPCs because there are no other players to bounce ideas off of, and so you need ways to do that. You need a variety of scenarios. One-on-one play can very easily be very lethal, right? There's just so many situations that could overwhelm a single character, or the single character might not have the right tool for the right job. And then that's disappointing. Not always, some of it's fine, but if it happens often enough, it's disappointing and not rewarding. And so to make it rewarding, I think, like you said, Shawn, you need different scenarios, different things you can solve through your skills, through spells, through attacks, through whatever, right? Because otherwise, you're just going to end up in situations that are not going to reward you and feel like they're frustrating, right? If I'm playing that cleric and everything is about athletics checks or any version like that, you're just going to end up feeling like the square peg round hole situation.
Yeah, I think what Teos said is spot on. When you're playing one-on-one where the one player only has one character, you need to rewrite whatever you're running
Mm-hmm.
if it was made for multiple characters. And we played over 3 sessions, right? The first session was basically all role playing, a few ability checks to learn information. The second, I tried to run as written to test the hypothesis that was put forth in the adventure that this is what you need to do to change the adventure for one-on-one play. And we quickly found out, even as I tried to give Teos and his character a lot of wiggle room in order to be able to take it by himself, it didn't work. So the third session was when I really changed it around to tailor it to one character, not even by changing the adventure, but by changing how the adventure interacted with Teos's character.
The action economy in combats and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. One of the things that I should have done is in the first room you went to, it was the toy room. There was like a bed and a bunch of toys. And you didn't really search that room. And there's a bag of tricks in that room.
Okay.
Now, a bag of tricks for a one-on-one game could really have been a game changer.
Yeah.
Because now you're throwing that second creature out there that can not just attack, but soak up hits.
Yeah.
And I kicked myself after I didn't just present it to you in that room. But right, for one-on-one play, you need to specifically design the adventure or change the adventure to make it can be dangerous if played poorly, but it can't be dangerous by its own very own nature.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it gets into, we talked about this with Ethan last week, and the idea of a journaling game, right? Like it would be dissatisfying if in a journaling game it said, well, you're up against this particular type of situation, which you're no good at, so fail, right? Like that's not what the game is about. It's about this larger enjoyment of the system. And I think that one of the things you'd want to do with solo play is to portray kind of everything that role-playing games and D&D can be. And you want to provide that, but without making it pass-fail because you chose a certain type of character, right? You introduce a fighter, oh, well, you're in trouble now, right? You're fighting 3 bugbears. Good luck. And so that's where, I think the variety can be different. Unless you want more of that board game type experience, then I would go with a board game that supports that, a skirmish game or something like that, that just gives you that feel.
And I don't think one-on-one play is for every player, because I think one-on-one play demands that the player be proactive in suggesting solutions and the game master being willing to accept those things. Yeah. Because normally, if I'm playing with 6 players, right, I'm presenting a problem and I'm telling the players, this is the problem. How do you get around it? With one-on-one play, I could still do that, but it would be much harder for one player to come up with all the ideas that would be perfect for the situation. So I would need the player to say, well, I happen to know one of the bandits in this encounter. So I talk to that bandit and try to get them to stop their banditry. Okay, cool. Now we have a fun combat, but also interaction, but also story, and let it flow from there.
Yeah, I mean, a good example is puzzles, right? And any time you run puzzles with, say, like an Adventurers League type situation, one player will just look at it and solve it. One of them goes, I hate puzzles, I'm out. And they just, stare off into space, turn away from the table. And then a couple of people are really scratching their heads and working through it diligently. When you do one-on-one, you've got one of those players. It could be any of those six. And so things can go very, very differently. And that's where the adventure needs to be able to adapt to that.
Yeah. So great question from both of our listeners. Thank you. I'll tell you at the end of the show how you can send in your questions and comments. But now we're going to get to our news and commentary section, starting with Diamond going bankrupt again. Teos, lead us through this business stuff.
Oh, non-gladly. The strange events that began in January, and it feels like it's 2 years ago, but it was really this January of this year, continue on with Diamond now filing to move from Chapter 11 bankruptcy to Chapter 7. And the motion was approved by the court. So in Chapter 7, a court-appointed trustee sells the debtors, Diamond's non-exempt assets to pay off creditors, allowing Diamond to then pay off their debts. Chapter 11 is really about reorganizing and continuing your operations, right? So it's not selling off your things. But the goal of Chapter 7, which is what is now happening to Diamond, is to liquidate and sell everything, cease operations, distribute the funds, be done, walk away. And one of the things that it does is it allows owners who personally guaranteed business loans to discharge those liabilities. And this is really what's going on, which is that this has gone on so long and become so complicated, largely through Diamond's behavior, doing things that companies are suing it, claiming fraud, and so on. And this is things like we've talked about, where Diamond is saying that they own all of the products that companies sent to them for consignment sales, right? Mm-hmm. And refusing to give them back unless you give them a pile of money for them. So all of that has caused delays and costs to explode. So JP Morgan Chase Bank is no longer willing to provide the funds to continue the Chapter 11 process. And they said in an article here, as of October, fees have been over $12 million to the 6 businesses managing this process. Several have filed requesting more compensation. So as they all turned away, and then Chapter 11 is no longer possible, and that's where we end up with this move to Chapter 7 to just take everything apart. And all of this is bad news for the companies with inventory held by Diamond, right? So Pathfinder or smaller groups that are waiting for some way to get things back. One of them was on YouTube saying, I literally have a deal that I'm waiting for them to sign to give me back my stuff. I'm paying the money to give it to buy it back from them. And now this may never happen. It's also likely bad news for Sparkle Pop, the owner of WizKids and other companies who bought various parts of Diamond. If any of those are impacted by it, this didn't really go into it, but it's unlikely to be good news for them. So we'll see how that goes, but maybe we're at the end, maybe.
Yeah, the end, and not in a good way.
No.
Yeah. But with one end, we get a new beginning. Mm-hmm. And there is a new region in the Legends of Greyhawk organized play campaign. The Legends of Greyhawk campaign has announced that Castle Greyhawk will be a new region within its campaign. This region will premiere its adventures at Winter Fantasy 50, coming in February in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Awesome.
There's a blog post at legendsofgreyhawk.com that provides details on the history of the mega dungeon, which sits below 3 ruined towers. And if you're an old-time Greyhawk fan, you don't need any more introduction to Castle Greyhawk than that. We hear that the first 4 adventures in Castle Greyhawk are standalone but loosely connected dungeon crawls. They are going to be a new type of adventure called Challenge Adventures. These adventures will offer significantly greater challenges than the standard adventure. Cool. Each adventure is scheduled for exclusive premieres at in-person or online events that are run by Baldwin Games, beginning with Winter Fantasy, and then future adventures will premiere at future virtual weekend conventions, at Origins, and then at Gen Con. The first adventure in this series is For Whom the Bell Tolls, written by Ron Lundeen, formerly of Wizards of the Coast.
Yeah.
The lead designer for this region is Shu King Tan.
Mm, awesome.
There's a link in our show notes. We need to get somebody from Baldman Games and the Legends of Greyhawk campaign on here to
Great
talk
idea.
about what they've been doing, because I know there are regions and I know that things have been going on, but I'm sort of out of the loop and I would
Yeah,
love to hear it broadcast a little more widely. So
great
we'll try
idea.
to do that. We have new news from Gen Con about participation grants. Teos, can you lead us through that?
Yeah, new blog post from Gen Con shares its program to, quote, help gaming enthusiasts from historically underrepresented communities attend Gen Con. These grants support attendees who want to grow their careers, launch creative projects, expand local gaming scenes, and make an impact in the tabletop world. I was glad to see this blog post because I had talked to somebody recently about the program. It just sounds amazing. Sounds really good in terms of what it can do to help somebody who wouldn't otherwise afford going to Gen Con be able to do so. The blog post has all of the process detailed for how you submit an application, which take place between January 5th and the 26th. So you can head there now, start planning, and then do that during the January process. There is a link in our show notes, but also you can go to gencon.com and find it there. If for some reason you don't find it, just ping us in any place and we'll share the link with you.
We got news on the state of Cosmere. We've been wondering what's going on with the Cosmere RPG. And thanks to some links out there, we were able to learn that Brotherwise Games, the creators of the Cosmere RPG, released a video that summarized the news that was shared at Dragonsteel Nexus, Brandon Sanderson's annual convention. We got creative director Johnny O'Neill, lead designer Leah Soon, board game lead designer Hayden Dillard, lead writer Merrick Moyer, and adventure and project lead Lila Fujiwara answering questions. What did they talk about in this video, Teos?
It was a pretty good video. So this video, summarizes everything that was shared at the con, and it's one of these things where, like we were saying, it can be a little hard to tell what is going on with Cosmere. You do see some product releases, but then you get the feeling if you had been at Dragonsteel Nexus, you would know everything that's going on. And one thing they didn't share in this video that I've heard through other means is they had a huge hall all playing Cosmere. Right? And so this is the kind of things that you may not be aware that these things are happening, that there is all this energy if it's not sort of communicated around. So I think that's what this video is trying to do. So their goals are both to make great games for Cosmere fans and, importantly, they said, to bring new gamers into the Cosmere. So I thought that was interesting to have that dual goal there. For 2026, they're releasing to retail several different products. Shards of Creation is a trick-taking card game, may release, intended both to please fans with exciting art and card abilities, but fun in the way hearts or spades can be, fun for any fan, even if you don't know what this is depicted on the card. The Mistborn campaign setting is coming in September. So you may know Cosmere released with its core setting being the Stormbreaker saga type of novels. That's what it's providing there as a world. And so this is now bringing Mistborn, a different Brandon Sanderson world, as a campaign setting. So that's coming in September. They shared the accolades the Cosmere RPG has earned as the #1 game and RPG crowdfunder of all time across various categories of that. The Stormlight books are now in retail, including Barnes & Noble. Mistborn supports 2 different eras, both the first trilogy's era and the later era. So you get secret societies, technology, Twinborn, all of these things make the second era compelling and involve new rules. They also will have things like the Kandra and Kalas ancestries, which, if you know the books, this is all super exciting and cool. Heroic paths, metallic arts, talent trees, firearms, train robberies, those things support the second era and more. The video provides a look at several of these options. So if you're interested, link in our show notes or search for it on YouTube, and you can see all of that. The Mistborn handbook is over 400 pages. Woo! Then we have the Mistborn World Guidebook, which is full of lore, including new lore in areas where they had to actually flesh out the lore in order to properly covered in the RPG in areas where the novels don't provide that. Mistborn Legacy is an epic era spanning adventure for levels 1 to 9 that does that dual era and back and forth between them. Very cool. Part of an era 2 adventure was played live on stage at the convention, so that's also cool. And there's a deck building game, Mistborn The Well of Ascension, that comes out in November, themed to the second Mistborn book. So you've got different eras being represented in these kinds of products as well. And then beyond that, they said the team has been working on Elantris, World Hopper, and Warbreaker settings, which comes out for the RPG, is something still to be decided, and Brandon will ultimately be making that choice. Beyond the Cosmere, the underlying Plotweaver system, which is what they call that rules engine, Plotweaver, that will be open to creators with a license. So they want Plotweaver to be, quote, the aspiring game designer's RPG, unquote. PlotweaverRPG.com is a site that allows you to sign up and be notified when the license or news comes out. The mailing list, they said, will be just for these purposes and also to identify the vanguard of interested designers. So if you'd like to write for Cosmere, you want to get in on that, go to PlotweaverRPG.com and give them your email, and they'll let you know.
Interesting. I was wondering what the licensing might be, and now we know that it's at least on their radar.
Yep.
No longer on the radar in the Exodus video game sphere is James Ohlen. James Ohlen appears to no longer be the head of the studio that was creating the Exodus video game, or that did create it. Quoting, "At this stage, James felt his work on the game was complete and that the polishing and tuning were in great hands with the team," said Abby Hodes, Vice President of Corporate Communications for Hasbro, in a statement. Hodes also added that Ohlen had, quote, asked to shift his creative focus to tabletop RPGs and would stay on as creative consultant for the company. They were calling Exodus largely complete, but it may be of some concern that Hasbro has seen Exodus as much more than a video game, launching several related ventures and products. And James Ohlen had written the Exodus RPG originally, and then it was moved to this video game concept. What's our take on this, Teos?
You know, I've thought about this a lot and chatted with folks on Ian World and other places, because it's most of the articles focused on either James Ohlen is stepping away, or this new Paul Della Bitta coming in as the new head. And then there's one statement on Bloomberg that talks about had been asked to shift his creative focus to RPGs. And it's not clear, you know, is that why had? They had asked him to, and then he stepped away, or like, I'm not entirely sure. It also seems like a really weird fit. Like if you have, yes, James Ohlen has written like DM's Guild supplements and so on. He talks about his D&D campaigns and releases these various things. He wrote the Exodus RPG. But is he, does he really want to not work on video games? Like that seems strange. Also, it seems very strange that if you were Hasbro or Wizards, that you would say, yeah, you're this guy who's worked on Baldur's Gate, has worked on all these different celebrated video games, and we've just finished working with you on Exodus. We really actually want you to go to that area of the company that we don't ever talk about on investor calls, right? We want you to just go write RPGs. That seems really weird, and try to fit you into the team when you're sort of like this big, important, must be highly compensated person. I don't get this at all. Like this seems really strange to me. I did reach out to Wizards to ask whether, is he somebody who's joining the D&D team, but I haven't gotten any response back yet. If we do, we'll update this story. But I'm very curious what really is going on behind this, and it's hard because I've seen a lot of news sites just run with it that he will now be part of the D&D team or things like that, and I'm not clear what this means. I think there's one little sentence here that everybody's really working off of, and until we know more, I don't think we'll know what it really truly means.
Yeah, when I originally saw this, it was in social media, and it was accompanied with the old eye roll of, oh look, Wizards screwed up and they lost this guy.
Yeah.
and without any other reporting. And then later it was like, oh, by the way, Blizzard veteran Paul Delabita is taking over the video game division, reporting directly to John Haidt, president of Wizards, who I assume John worked with Paul when they were both at Blizzard.
Yeah.
So that seemed like not, oh, Wizards screwed up again news.
Yeah.
But then there was that. Now he had been asked to came in. So, but we also have reported that James Ohlen seems to really love tabletop role playing game design because he's been putting out stuff on the DMs Guild.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's been highly regarded and great sellers, great
Yeah.
content. So it is not beyond believability to me that maybe somebody just wants to make RPGs and they've already done their video game thing and it's more relaxing.
Yeah.
Maybe who knows?
Maybe. Yeah. And maybe he doesn't, demand a big salary or something like that, but it can be hard to integrate somebody like that into a team, right? Somebody who has a lot of talent, but has never had to play by those actual rules and has been in very creative spaces can be a tough fit for a company. So it'll be interesting if he really does come across as a designer in the D&D area. It would be easy for me to see something like, well, he's going to work on Hasbro video game or role-playing games that'll support anything, right? Mm-hmm. Like, and maybe they have a couple of ideas for that. But we'll see. Who knows? And maybe, I don't know the guy. Maybe he is the kind of person who goes, nope, I'm ready. Like I don't need a big salary. I can give up the video game life, and I'm ready to do whatever I'm told. Like let's collaborate, let's work together. I love teamwork. I don't know. It's who knows? But I was just hesitant to jump on too much of that sentence. Right? It's a small sentence with a weird past tense that makes it hard to figure out where in the process of things did he. And what happened? And the most likely thing is either he really expressed, I want to get out of here, or somebody decided, no, we'd rather have somebody else in charge. And somewhere along that line, something happened to cause this little bit of text to show up, but I don't know that it's clear yet. We'll see.
Yeah. Yep. In our creator corner this week, we want to remind you, don't stop yourself from cracking the sun. As of this recording, there are 14 days left in the Crack the Sun Draw Steel backer kit project. The last I checked, we were at about 1.9 million with 2 weeks to go. So Teos is having a big role in this project. So I hope that you will go check it out because it is going to be something to remember.
Thanks, Shawn. Yeah, I just, one of the pleasures of the job I have is I got to see a very rough draft of what's being written for Act 1. And it's awesome. It's really fun. And so I love seeing that. I love seeing good people doing good work. And we're having fun meetings discussing Act 2. And it's all moving forward. And yeah, very exciting. So certainly a project I would recommend, even if I wasn't totally biased, but I am totally biased. You should totally back this project.
Exactly.
Yep.
Let that bias flag fly.
Yep. And as we said before, this truly funds the path forward of MCDM. So it's also, a vote with your dollar situation. If it tells MCDM whether to keep going into Draw Steel and how hard. So that's pretty cool.
There you go. That's our news and commentary section this week.